So in looking over historical textual material from the osteopathic profession, I've come across a few descriptions of methods to do particular things, or at least the claim is that these methods do particular things. So the one that I'm going to show today is a direct description from John Martin Littlejohn. So you've already seen the slide or the screenshot of the description as to how to do this, and I'm going to show you what it looked. So Littlejohn was talking about any reflex disturbances, whatever he particularly meant by that, and then how to deal with it, which is a constitutional treatment of the spine with the aim of coordinating the nervous system. Now, his claim is that you take your thumb and your forefinger, just like so, you go on either side of the spinous process, from occiput all the way down to coccyx, right? So essentially, you're just going down, you're putting pressure. The thing that I would note here is that regardless of how strong your hands are, this could be quite hard on your fingers. But he basically tells you to go all the way down, and I'll do that just so that there's some continuity instead of saying, oh, this is what he says to do, then not do it. Right? So he's just saying go on either side of the spinous process and push down. Right? So no context with what you're aiming to experience from the practitioner side, the feedback that the patient would give you as a result of this. It's just go down. Now, I'm not going to go all the way down to the coccyx, but I am going to go down to at least the top of the sacrum. I'm not going to go down to the coccyx because I feel no need to do it, even for the purpose of demonstration. So he says, go down. He would tell you to go down to the coccyx. I would say, I don't know why you'd bother, because that's all primarily just general connective tissue down there. So you go back up, is what he says. And part of the reason I'm talking is because as a practitioner, this is very boring. Right? You're not staying in one place quite long enough to have any particular notable interface with the tissue where you'd be able to either detect or assess and then reassess change. He's just basically telling you go up and down. And as I do this, what I will let you know is that internally, this is personal, right? This is my experience, so this would be a constructivist truth, the truth that entirely depends on me. I really feel the need to rush. I want to get this over with. So now he says just go down, push deeper on either side of the spinous processes. If you did this regularly, your fingers would either get super strong or super tired. I would say more likely to get super tired. Right? And now, another thing that's hidden as an assumption in this is that you would accurately be able to identify for sure that you could get deep enough on every human back that you could really get down to close to vertebral bodies and really push and move them and mobilize them, which I don't know is an accurate statement because each person's anatomy is different enough that they're not all going to respond the same way. So it says do that, so it's basically go down, up, down again. Then we'll have you lay on your left side and face me. Okay. So then the next step he says, should we force just a bit? The next step he says is to go all the way through the neck with two hands, he says two hands, and pull the muscles away from the spinous process. Right? And he's calling this, at least in the undated written, essentially article, that this is the constitutional spinal treatment and it should do a good job in all reflex disturbances. Right? Now the reason I don't particularly like this method, so what you'll see is as I pull on, even if I'm in a perfect position, as I pull on the erector mass, I roll the patient. The only way to stop that is if I push into him and block. Right? So basically up here I'd have to kind of jam my hip into his arm. And for some people, because of the proximity to their face, this may be uncomfortable for both patient and practitioner. The other thing that Littlejohn notes, so just to touch back on why I'm not a big fan of this in particular, is again, I roll the patient. So instead of working on the erector mass, I tend to roll the patient. Another way that I can abate the movement of the patient is put one of my forearms down to kind of block. So I'll move away from the arm. If I block here, then more of its hands, but I still roll the patient a fair amount. But the thing that Littlejohn notes with his constitutional spinal treatment is that he's found from personal experience that putting the left side up followed by the right side gives the best results. He says he doesn't know why, but he says that that's what he's noticed. So that would be what you'd have to call a constructivist truth, or a constructivist truth would be a truth or a piece of knowledge that depends on the individual making the claim, their previous experience, and the point of observation. Right? So he's basically just saying, work the musculature, the erector mass on both sides, more than once in more than one way, as well as poke them on either side of the spinous process to attempt to, in his words, essentially access the cerebrospinal nervous system and do something to coordinate it. I'm going to go ahead and say, as a method, those are two technical applications, kind of poking on either side of the spinous process, that may have some value under certain circumstances to be inhibitory. So if you're holding on either side of the spinous process where it's tender, you can create situations where maybe you drop some sensation. Working on the erector mass, this is a reasonable method, but I don't like it because the patient rolls, and I don't work on the erector mass particularly well. What I would say is that if you have cause to work on the erector mass, you may be better to do it in prone. If you can't do it in prone, lateral is okay. I have the preference of being behind the patient and using a thumb bar, right? Because I'll usually be sitting and I'll be moving the erector mass, and I'm a little bit more sure that I'm doing it. He says two hands. Another option is to use the concept that I talked about with relational motion. One hand on the erector mass, pull, and you can use the other hand for mixed leverage. So short leverage, long leverage, or then you have combined leverage. So push the hip in relation, so you get some motion of the bones under the relatively still muscle, right? You can do that here, off the shoulder, similar idea. So there's ways to modify it, but what Littlejohn is essentially saying is that he finds a really good method consistently in many cases. Poke on either side of the spinous process is up, down, down, up, down, reef on the erector mass. I've made note as to how to possibly modify that, and then for the claim that Littlejohn's making, I'm not going to agree that this is the best way to coordinate the nervous system, because for me to know that it coordinated the nervous system in a reflex disturbance, first I need to be able to identify the reflex in a way other than what the patient says to me. Then I have to assess that first, which he doesn't say to do. Then I have to reassess it in some way after, and it's preferable that it's not just the patient telling me, because then the patient can say it feels awesome, and they could feel awesome, but so they could subjectively feel awesome, but objectively things could be going wrong. So I have a problem with the claim, I don't necessarily have a problem with the method, and I've suggested ways to maybe work in another way with the method, make the method a little bit easier on the practitioner, make the method maybe a little bit more comfortable for the patient.